Well, I don't know exactly where Lou is, but okay. Hi everybody. Uh, we're on. It's Monday, and just to put everything in perspective, and I apologize, I'm a little behind the time. Uh, the Electoral College is voting, and I want to say that really nothing's changed.
Although Trump got as close as he was ever going to get when it was what 240 to 232 before.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. You know what? I should get rid of the background and just. Hey, Lou.
Patsy.
Lou,
Hey, Frank.
how's it going?
All right.
Let me just give me a second here. Let me get rid of the background.
Yeah, he's fading into the stadium. No, now you look like Oz.
Well, I'm sorry, dude. Just give me a second here. All right? We are live, as if you folks can't tell, right? Have you been paying attention to the Electoral College today?
On and off.
Yeah, I have too. Um,
I don't know who's missing because the last tally I saw was 240 to 232. I know Pennsylvania's in.
Yeah, I can tell you that the three states that are out: Oregon, California, and Hawaii. And those three states are, I believe, 7, 55, and 4 electoral votes respectively.
Okay.
so basically, nothing's changed, right? I mean, if you look at it from a mathematical point of view, I guess everything's playing out exactly as everybody thought it should.
Did you see they tossed one of the electors in Michigan this morning?
I did not see that.
You didn't hear that?
No.
One of the
Some of
electors.
us actually have to go to work, Lou.
What's that?
Some of us actually have to leave home and go to work.
Well, it was a tough commute for me today, but I made it. I'd have to look up the guy's name, but I don't know whether he was going to cause an issue, vote for Trump, or what it was. And don't forget, the Michigan legislature is run by the GOP. The Speaker of the House said, "You're gone," and replaced him.
I know there was somebody, Frank, I can't remember who the hell it was, who's looking at telling everybody to protest, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who the hell it was.
Well,
Maybe that was the guy.
maybe, but I saw in Michigan, Lou, as well, there were a bunch of people who showed up to report as electors, and they were phony electors.
Right.
And you saw that, right? And
I did see that.
Yeah, the state police just told them, no, the electors are already here. They're already checked in.
You know what surprises me, and what really both surprises me and kind of saddens me, is the fact that we're talking about the electors or the people in the Electoral College. I mean, these guys were on CNN, right? Casting their votes. Lou, I'm 52 years old. So is Frank. We've never saw anything where they actually had to put anything on any news network where they were casting their votes. It was always just a done deal.
And you know what? I believe in Michigan. Well, they locked down all the branches today for protection.
Crazy.
Fuck.
And then you had Stephen Miller on this morning saying we're going to get alternate electors.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, he went on Fox Entertainment and said that, but everybody knew that you couldn't do that, right? I mean, all right, maybe the idiots that watched that didn't know it.
Well, I had to troll it and say, I hope you go to an alternate country.
But I mean, I'm of two minds. and Frank, I'll tell you this much. There's a part of me that says, I'm glad this is, you're going to see the end of this, right? It's going to be over. If it's not over yet, and honest to God, I don't know what Biden's count is, but I would assume by now it's got to be close to 270 if it's not.
I'm looking now. It says it's official.
Okay.
Crossed the 270 vote threshold now.
So he did it. So
California must have reported.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It must be all over. And there's a part of me that says, you know what? I want this to go very slowly and very painfully. And I want all these idiots to, it's the 1,000 cuts, right? It's the death by 1,000 cuts. And I'll be honest, I don't know which way to lean. Part of me wants this to be over with so we can get on, but I've had to put up with 4 years, and you guys have too, but we've put up with 4 years of shit that I almost wanted to play out for maybe, I don't know, a day or two. You know what I mean?
Well, you see the switching of gears in the GOP or the Trump side of things, where they've stopped kind of focusing on the court cases and now they're moving to the court of public opinion, right? So they're appealing to the public to say, you hear the Rush Limbaughs of the world saying there's no world where conservatives and liberals can coexist, and you hear people calling for a new union, so to speak, out of Texas, and then you see this op-ed in Washington or the Wall Street Journal calling Dr. Joe Biden kiddo. So you see that these attacks are coming now, and then they're attacking Biden's son. But I think Joe Biden is doing the smart thing, and he's just not responding to any of that. And I think that the best thing he can do moving forward is to not respond at all and just to govern. Because as we've talked about before, and I think last week on our show, we talked about how things will continue to improve for his ratings, in the sense of, if we return to some normalcy in this country, which is bound to happen eventually, and the economy returns to where it should be, people are just going to forget about Trump. He's going to fade into the ether. He's already talking about saying that he's trying to find a way to back out of running in 2024, because the expectation is that he'll run in 2024, and I don't think he wants the humiliation of it anymore. I don't think he wants the responsibility or the humiliation, and he knows that's what's on the horizon. So he's trying to find a way to back out of it. It's just a matter of almost deprogramming all these idiots that have been behind him.
Well, that brings up a lot, right? Lou, especially out here, right out in Mayberry. I have always argued that eventually the hype and the what's a good word for it? But the novelty, I guess, once Trump is out of office and he no longer has the clout that he has, which looks like it's going to happen here pretty quick. It's definitely going to happen in January. That's enough. Okay. And people eventually are going to are going to make their way to something else, whatever that something else is. Right now is a tough time because you have so many people who think that this thing is rigged, right? Do you think eventually, and this is going to sound stupid, but do you think that eventually people are just going to get bored with this and just kind of like move on? I mean, you're going to have your true believers, right? Your true believers, but eventually people have to start living their lives.
Yeah, there's still some Trump signs up out here.
Yeah.
I think January 21st is when you stick a fork in it and their reality finally sets into the last few.
What happens on January 6th? Isn't there some kind of congressional?
Well, actually, January 6th, Pence has to open up all the envelopes and do the official count.
Right.
Oh, so what we saw today really isn't the end?
It's what you saw today that you never saw is the states officially doing it. Then on January 6th, when the Senate reopens their new session, is when the vice president opens all the official envelopes for a formality tally, and there's nothing he can do about it. And he declares Biden the winner.
So what Pence is going to do on January 6th is it's just going with the flow.
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
The trouble is, there's people out there. I went on to TikTok last night, and I'm just amazed at the people that actually think that it can still be turned over, that they can sue the Supreme Court. I'm like, are you that stupid?
Stephen Miller was on Fox Entertainment today, right? And he's telling everybody, who's willing to watch that, which I'm sorry if you do, that they're going to put their own people in as electorates and try to do it that way when constitutionally it's impossible to do.
You realize Trump is making $7 million a day off the gullible flock?
Wow.
And Rudy's making how much of that 70 million? 20,000 a day?
20,000 a day?
The thing that worries me, I guess not worries me, because it's to the point where, we have what we have, and I don't worry so much anymore about it. It's more like, what do we do? Let's plan. Let's figure out where we attack the soft spots for this kind of crap. Is that they're all looking at the new playbook. How do we undermine the governance that's going to come from the Democrats in the next 4 years? Because they're already starting to try to attack that. And how do we, as people who want to see progress, and I don't mean just in the progressive sense, I just mean progress against this virus, progress against the stagnation in our economy because of the virus, progress in healthcare issues. How do we address that when we've got people who are going to just want to play the stalemate game? You remember the party of no? That was the Republican Party during the Obama years. Now we have this, it might not even be the party of no, it's just the party of nothing gets done because it never gets brought to a vote. They don't even vote no. So, how do we get past that? I mean, I wonder if the messaging has to be, we've talked about this to some extent, I really would get out there and start touting the fact that this was a historic drubbing. This was a historic beating for an incumbent president. The American people want action. They want action. They've spoken to this. And if you don't do it, we are going to take action against all norms and parliamentary process, because you have not recognized that in the last 4 years. We don't need to recognize it. We need progress in this country. So I think we have to start looking at, the example has been set by Trump. The example has been set by Mitch McConnell. There's no reason to stand on formalities anymore. We need stuff to get done. Excuse my bluntness. We need stuff to get done. So let's get it done.
I would come out pounding. It's a mandate by the American people. Not only did I get 306 electoral votes, I won by 7 million popular votes, which Trump couldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And he won last time by losing by 3 million popular votes.
And the thing is, I've talked to, and I've had conversations with, I mean, let's face it, look at where we live, right? We have nothing but right-leaning or total Trumpers to begin with. And I always said, look, he started 3 million votes in the hole.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As soon as we were available to vote, as soon as it was possible to vote, pick a state, it doesn't really matter. He was already 3 million in a hole. And not only did he not eclipse that, he actually failed by another 4 million. On top of that, he never eclipsed the 3 million that he was in a hole to begin with. He dropped by another 4. How do you expect to win whenever you can't even make up the $3 billion that you were down to begin with? Even if it was, let's be stupid and say it was split 1.5 in each state between New York and California. You didn't do anything in basically 48 other states. Actually, it's more than that if you count territories. To change that. If you did anything, you made it worse. How the fuck do you expect to win?
It comes down to these things that we talked about before. He never really connected with anybody else. He failed on the pandemic. He failed on the issue of his presidency, which was that defining moment. I mean, I don't know how many times Patsy said, that every president deals with a major, issue during their presidency, and it's how you meet that challenge. And Trump ran from that challenge. He tried to lie about the challenge. He tried to lie it away, and it didn't work. He thought that the Wall Street, folks would save him. They didn't save him. He never connected on any kind of policy messaging. He really didn't have a policy. So there was a huge part of the electorate that was motivated, very motivated, to get rid of this guy because of his failures, because of his lying. I mean, there's tons of people out there like us that were just upset with his actions and his antics. And then there was a whole bunch of people that just said, how can I vote for a guy who failed the American people on the biggest issue of his day, which was the pandemic? So, it is a historic mandate, Lou. It's a great terminology, and it needs to keep getting pounded into the people's minds, and it needs to keep being messaged. And the fact that it's a historic mandate needs to be also repeated to those folks in Congress that want to somehow become that obstructionist party again and say, you always told us the people voted for these policies. Well, they voted against your policies now. So it's time to change.
I keep going back to the same question over and over and over again. At what point does the Republican Party sit there and say, look, we have to change our tune? And if you look at the people who they should be in their corner, right? At least 2 minorities who are siding with the Democratic Party are extremely conservative, right? But they feel like they're outcasts. What does it take for these folks to finally sit there and say, you know what? I get it. I understand it. Come to our party. We will do you right.
Their skin's the wrong color.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it that much?
Yeah.
I mean, I understand I'm preaching to the choir in a lot of this, and that says a lot about the Democratic Party who are just not grabbing this and running with it. But whenever you look at who is going to be the biggest voting bloc in this country, and you have an entire party who's saying we want nothing to do with you, how do they expect to win? I guess that's my biggest question. How do they expect to win when you're alienating? Oh, let's just be stupid and saying 55 out of 50%. How do you expect to win? You can only jerry rig so much.
Yeah, and you're in your messaging, what you're messaging, fear and hate.
Yeah.
That's going to keep decreasing with the younger generation. Doesn't matter what color they are.
Gen Z, which is our sons, our kids, they don't want to hear that. Okay. I mean, maybe it worked with our generation. It didn't work with millennials, and it sure as fuck doesn't work with the Gen Zs. They don't want to hear that divisiveness because they don't know anything else. How the hell do you expect to win? I don't get it. If I'm looking at this as, okay, I got to win and I got to put people in my corner and I got to put people in place who are going to go my way, you're going to play the politics. How do you do that whenever you don't have what you're telling two generations at this point that it just doesn't matter what you feel or think?
So I think one of the interesting things that could be done about this election and where it's gone and where it is now and where our country is just exactly the question that we're asking, that Patsy's asking, and we're all trying to deliberate about. And that is, dissecting what was the long-term plan, okay, for the Republican Party. And if they all just got swept away by the Trump issue, which, the argument is there. They were all afraid to step up and combat him because they thought they would get tweeted out of existence, tweeted out of a job, that he would tweet about them and that their electorate in their little county or their little state or wherever they were would vote against them. Okay. So, but what's the long-term prospect here? Is it apartheid? I mean, literally, I don't mean to be silly, but is it apartheid where, 4% or 6% of the population controlled the other 90-something% of the population? Is that what the Republicans thought they were going to do in the United States of America? Did they think they were going to rule by apartheid? Because there clearly was this last great white hope. That was Trump. He was the last great white hope that was going to undo all their fears and anger about having a black president. They all wanted to get back at the black president. And that's what Trump did. He was their champion. He came in from day one and started undoing Obama policies. It was clear. That was all that was about. And so is that what the long-term plan is? That we're going to gerrymander, we are going to control through brute force and power, through killing people in the streets. Is that what this is? Apartheid? Was it apartheid part 2 in the United States? And Lou, I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Is that something that maybe behind the scenes, or was it just, they just kind of fell into that position?
Well, did you see what Newt Gingrich tweeted yesterday?
I did not. No.
Did you? You didn't see that?
No.
See if I could find it. Let's see.
He said nothing. I'm going to run here.
Okay.
Here you go. Well, let's see. It was how many dumbass things, but.
Well, it's Gingrich. There's a lot of dumbass things, but.
Why is Georgia's Secretary of State Raffensperger working so hard to add drop boxes and take other steps to make it harder for Republicans to win? Is he really that intimidated by Stacey Abrams? What do you read between the lines there? I think there's your answer right there.
Clearly race. It's clearly race. Right?
And it is. You're talking about Trump, the great white hope, and that's it. The people are willing to give up freedoms and democracy without realizing it for authoritarianism, as long as the person of color isn't treated equal to them.
Frank, what was the thing? As long as I can make the black man be less than you.
Lyndon Johnson told
Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah.
That's the secret to getting white voters to vote for you.
Yeah.
If you can make the worst white man feel he's better than the best black man, not only will the white person vote for you, they'll hand you your wallet, you their wallets.
And they were dead on. And that was when? How long ago was that?
1964.
Yeah.
64, right? So we're talking 64, 74, 84, 94, 2000. We're almost talking about 5 decades later, right?
It is five and a half.
Yeah. And it still applies. 64, my God, 2 of us weren't even born yet.
I was 7.
You were 7, right? It applied then, and it still applies now.
It does. Sadly, it does.
I mean, my God. And we all know folks who are buying into this, right? If I can make him the worst thing, I control you. I own you. It's terrible. The only thing worse than that, you're gonna love this. You're gonna love this segue. The only thing worse than that is sexism, right?
And I know what you're going to say.
Right? I mean, come on. All right, it's very. I'm sorry, but it's the best I can do. Did you happen to see the Wall Street Journal?
Yeah.
Right? How the fuck do you tell? I can't imagine telling anybody, let alone a female, and I can tell you this from firsthand experience. Okay, because my wife is about to get her doctorate. Okay, so I can tell you what she's had to go through to get it. Now, there hasn't been a whole lot of politics involved in that because it's been a very academic way of going through things. But I've been watching her for the last couple of years, working like a dog to get to achieve her status, just to get to the point where she can present what she's done. Basically working to test, okay, to get her doctorate. And it's mind-blowing. I'd have told so many people to go fuck themselves by now. It's ridiculous. Okay? I mean, it's far... this is going to sound really petty, and it's nowhere near, but I know what I had to go through to get my master's certification. It's nowhere near what, if you're going to take that dynamic and put it in an academic sense, in order for her to get her doctorate, I cheated. I'm nowhere near that, right? And to tell somebody who finally did it, that a wise man once said, no one should call themselves a doctor unless they delivered a child. The fuck? I mean, dude, I was pissed off at this, and I don't even come close to that. You know? I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me. This is the standard that you're trying to set?
This is one of those things that I was talking about earlier about how they're kind of setting the table for attacking, the Bidens and attacking the whole, the Democrat side. Is it comes back to this idea of, undermining education, undermining the work it takes to become, a doctor, and saying, you don't have the right or the privilege to call yourself doctor because you're not a medical doctor. But the guy was an 86-year-old guy that wrote that letter. And, it's almost to the point, I will say this, shame on the Wall Street Journal for giving old man yelling at clouds going by an opportunity to be an op-ed writer, right? I mean, I don't mind, I hope and I celebrate older folks having the opportunity to share their views when those views are going to enhance our society. But when you're just sitting there yelling at the clouds going by, I don't need to hear your views. I'm sorry. And the Wall Street Journal should be holding themselves to a higher standard than that.
Yeah. Oh, and I'll be honest with you, Frank. I don't know which one was worse. The fact that this idiot, what the hell was his name?
Don't even give him a name. That's
Well,
yeah, this.
Did you know
Joseph Epstein, right? I don't know if it was as much him saying this or the platform that gave him the opportunity to say this that bothered me more. I expect old people, older than us, right? People who look at us as kids.
Well, did you know the Wall Street Opinion editor defended the item on Joe Biden today?
Oh, yeah, I've only just started with this shit. Oh, yeah. Come on, my wife's going for a doctorate. Do you really think I'm going to let this go that quick?
Hell no.
Come on, man.
When doing this, does the Wall Street Journal, honestly, does it lose credibility instantly? I mean, has it sunk into the point now where when you say just amongst us three, I mean, when you ask me now, would I rely upon something that's written in the Wall Street Journal? Would I go to it as a source of credibility? I have an opinion. I'm gonna hold my opinion. I want to know from you guys. If tomorrow I said, guys, I want to go over this article that I found in the Wall Street Journal. First thought, top of the mind. What do you guys say when I say that?
You know, up until this weekend, I'd have been far more willing to say, okay, I don't agree with it, but okay, let's see what they have to say. I don't even want to hear them anymore.
Well, don't forget, it's a Murdoch paper too, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. But didn't Murdoch supposed to have a hands-off approach?
Well, supposedly, and it makes you wonder if he had hands-on this one.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an old fuck too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm young compared to him.
Do you attribute any lack of credibility or credibility when I just say, look, I found this thing on this news item I'd like to talk about today. It's the source is the Wall Street Journal.
Well, I'd always give it some credibility, but like you said, might as well give me the New York Post now.
Yeah, to me, it's lost some status. It's lost some luster. It's like you had something in my eyes that, you know, in a way I thought, well, even if they are owned by Rupert Murdoch, he's allowed the folks that were the minds behind creating this brand to keep it at that status, you know. And to me, it's like, well, you've fallen from that pedestal. You've let that one moment. We've probably all had that moment with our parents, right? When they said to you, you know, some version of this is your name. Okay. This is the name that your grandfather came to this country with.
Yes.
This is the name that you were born with that we gave you.
Yes.
You know, it took generations to create that name and the respect that goes with that name. It takes 1 minute to lose that respect.
Yeah.
And the message behind that, right? That's Wall Street Journal's 1 minute of losing that respect.
Yeah. Yeah. Just
there's a story about a bridge builder in there somewhere. I don't know if you ever heard that.
No, go ahead.
Well, it's kind of off color too.
You know, the thing that gets me is the Wall Street Journal was always that one publication or the one pillar that, even though I didn't agree with, was always that historic, the one part that said, look, we may be conservative, but we're like the traditional conservatives, right? You know, we don't have to agree with everything that you're saying, but you have enough credibility and you have enough history to sit there and say, okay, you know, we can at least have this conversation. But whenever they did this, whenever this Epstein guy was able to get away with this, and then the Wall Street Journal turned around and doubled down on why they allowed him to even put this thing out there, that goes far beyond this idea of, okay, look, we're just old traditional conservatives, to no, we're just racist / sexist assholes. And that's what basically, whenever they twisted themselves in knots trying to defend this, that's basically what they said. We're just going to be assholes about this.
Well, speaking of assholes, this just come across the wire. Bill Barr resigned.
Nothing to do with the timing of today's events in the Electoral College at all, right?
Let me ask you this. I'll ask both of you this question, since Frank's here with me today. At what point, and I'll give this one to you. I'm maybe going to give you a timetable between now and Friday. Does he try to get a pardon? Because let's face it, this guy's did almost more damage than Trump did, because he enabled.
You're right. It says Deputy Attorney General Jeff Rosen is set to become acting.
Well, you know,
yeah, you're right. I mean, what he has done what was who was Nixon's AG that ended up in prison? I should know this.
Yeah, that was I mean, we were kids at the time.
Sheldon? No, it was.
Who the hell was his AG at the time? But in any case, let's, I don't know, make it say Smith. Who gives a shit? Is he looking for a pardon?
Hello?
John Mitchell.
John Mitchell. There you go. John Mitchell.
I think I think Barr's looking for every advantage that he can get. I think he's looking for every advantage, whether that's a pardon or credibility back with the bar associations that he's a member of, credibility with whatever ruling parties are involved with governing going forward. And I'm not saying that it's the Democrats. I'm saying that with the Republicans, he's got to keep some credibility with the folks who are still going to have a big hand to play in policy moving forward in the Republican Party. But I'm quite frankly wondering, as a member of the DC bar, which I am a member of the DC bar, I'm a member of the bar in a variety of jurisdictions, DC being one of them. I think Bill Barr is a member of the DC bar. I'm wondering if the DC bar is going to bring some kind of disciplinary proceedings against Bill Barr, because there is a strict ethical code in DC as well as many other states. They take it very seriously. And I'm just wondering and waiting to see what happens over the next 6 months or so about his license in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I know. I argue with a lot of people, especially on our side. Whenever I say, look, I know what it takes as a master in my art. In order to discipline somebody, you have to go through a lot. It takes a whole hell of a lot. This guy's, and I hate to be blunt, but he's got to fuck up royally. And then you're not exactly sure that they're going to, give any kind of disciplinary action. And we're very loose knit, right? I can't imagine that it would be much different in a very tight knit thing like the bar, right? I mean, you really have to almost force these people to take any kind of action against you. Is that fair?
I mean, I think to some extent. I think that if you've got somebody who, who's going to call in and say, I want to complain against Joe Smith. No Joe Smith attorney out there, please don't take offense to this. I don't know a Joe Smith attorney. I'm just using that name because it's common parlance.
Right.
Joe Smith attorney was my attorney, and he didn't call me back last Friday. I called him Friday morning at 9 o'clock in the morning. He didn't call me back. And you know what? I also sent him an email at Friday at 4, and I didn't get an email back from him. And it's now Monday at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And there are people out there that make those kind of complaints to the bar.
Yeah.
And there are some more that go beyond that line to a little further, of course, and further and further and further. But in those kind of cases, it is a lot of deference given. Okay, because we as attorneys know that there's times where people get busy. There are times where, and we try to preach amongst ourselves, get back to clients. That's the number one complaint that goes to the bar, is client complaints. Okay, get back to your clients. Don't leave them hanging. Keep them informed. But to get disbarred over something like that, or to have attorney discipline over something like that, is very, very rare. And that's where I think, your point is very well taken. But when you get into possible ethical violations around, this is almost unprecedented with the Constitution, with the way that this was interpreted by him, the pushing of the limits, so to speak, with what Barr did. The DC Bar Association, more than most that I've been involved in, is very proactive. They have a reputation of taking very, I would just say, diligent approach to taking disciplinary action against attorneys. They're not hesitant at all to take disciplinary action. Other jurisdictions do take a lot longer and are a lot more deliberate. DC is not.
Right. But at the same time, I mean, you want to do your due diligence, Absolutely. Right? You want to make sure that these these complaints
Oh, they do.
are legit, right?
They
I mean,
do. They have witnesses.
yeah.
They bring people in.
I mean,
they have full hearings. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that they take it very seriously, and they go that steps where sometimes, other folks will just shut it down at, somebody gets the documents and looks at the documents and says, this doesn't rise to the level of even having a hearing. Whereas DC looks at the documents and a lot of times those convert into hearings.
Yeah, and at the same time, whenever it's very obvious that you have to take actions against somebody. I don't want to say you're very hesitant to do it, but you're hesitant to do it because there's a lot of things that go into play.
Yeah,
and it's a very difficult position to put people in who, I mean, folks, it's just hard.
You're going against your own. You're going against your own, and there's an element of that. But I will say that I'm actually proud that, for the most part, folks in the Bar Association are very they want to root out people who are bad attorneys. Let's face it.
Yeah.
Because we know there's a sensitivity to the profession that folks, we don't want to be the butt of the joke. Okay.
No.
I mean, we can laugh along with them, and we can be of good humor, but the bottom line is we want people to get good service. We want people to be represented adequately. The system works better if people are working well around it. So we really try to police ourselves to a large extent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, does it become political in this situation? And that's where it becomes dangerous. And is it a political? They're going to cry, of course. Barr and his folks are going to cry political hit job. Yep. And that is a dangerous potential road to go down. But I think he was warned. Wasn't there somebody that sent a letter into maybe New York or one of the other states that he's a member of the bar in, that we went over a year or so ago?
I want to say it was New York.
Yeah. And so he's been on notice that his actions have been running afoul of some of the ethical rules.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's difficult. And it's even more difficult whenever you're in the position where people are coming to you and saying, we need to talk about this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, it's because you don't always know. Okay. I mean, we may think we know a whole lot about Barr, and maybe we're right, maybe we're not. But at the end of the day, we have to take what we see on MSNBC and CNN, yada, 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 with as much weight as what we're being told from the other side, because that's the only way you can really come up with an honest, I don't want to say decision, but you have to be willing to look at the whole.
Yeah, and here's where I would go.
And it's really, really difficult to do. And I don't envy these folks who have to make these decisions at all, because I've been there and I know it's not easy.
No, and when you look at the kind of conjecture and the hearsay of what's going on behind the scenes and the policy decisions that have gone on, I think those are tough ones to go about. Yeah. But here's where I'd go with it. When you had those hearings, when he was being questioned by Kamala Harris, if you recall that, when he was asked under oath what he would do in those situations, and then you've got a body of testimony. You've got a body of testimony under oath. You go back to that and you compare that to what was done, and you compare that to what was said. And,
right.
and are there lies there? Are there mistruths? Are there things that he said he would do that he didn't do? That's where I would go with it. If he's clean on that, then you can't do it.
Right. But in any case, it's two things. Number one, there's a whole lot that goes into it. And number two, it's not quick.
Right.
It takes a very long time to go through all of this.
Yeah.
Right. And as much as I'm not a Bill Barr fan by any means, and as much as I would like to see him get, for lack of a better term, bitch slapped as quick as possible, I'm sorry, the system has to go run its course. Right. And I know that from a personal point of view, and I'm not a lawyer, right? I'm not part of the bar like you are, Frank. I'm just saying, from things that I've had to deal with, it takes a long time, and you don't always know all of what's going on.
No, we're not privy to all that. So here's what I guess, and it comes down to this for me as a, we've basically bore our souls to you guys on this show a lot of times, and I think we've admitted to some of these personal biases, And it's a personal bias for me. I mean, here's the thing. When I looked at, and you've asked me questions before about, what do I think about a law firm that's going to take on a case? And I went into this profession saying everybody deserves representation, but we went through that talk and we said, but that doesn't mean you have to take the case. Okay, if I as an individual say this case does not align with my personal beliefs, I don't have to take the case, especially if it's a private matter. Right. This is a civil, political matter that you didn't have to align with the president and say, look, I'm just going to go along, in lockstep with you on these policies that I know are, against the Constitution. So when I look at an attorney and I say, I want you to be true to our Constitution, it's personal. It becomes a very personal thing for me. And then we talked about the folks who decided to kind of beg off of the case of the president's case against the election, right? And some of those were local attorneys in Pittsburgh. And they said, look, we're done. We're out. This case has no merit. And beyond that, it's just a bad look. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what they said. This is a bad look. Yeah. And I tip my cap to them, because there is a side of that where you could say, look at all the exposure, look at all the prestige we could have by taking this case to court. And surely they would have done a better job than Rudy Giuliani. They would have presented a much better case. They've argued the cases in front of federal courts much, more often than Rudy has in the last 8 years. So they could have continued to look good through that process, and they could have continued to have their name out there in that process, but they said, no, this is a bad look, we're out. And to me, that's where it's a personal thing, that if you're a Bill Barr who's gotten to this level in your career, what did he need from this?
Right.
I mean, he's already had a name in the political right. world. Why go along with this authoritarian regime? Maybe he was even part of the mastermind behind it, because let's face it, did Trump have the chops to figure out how he could use Article 2 of the Constitution in the way that he did? Or did that come from Bill Barr?
Yeah. I mean, well, even if he didn't, let's face it, he probably didn't. At some point, we have a standard.
Yeah.
Okay. And if we're not, if we're not capable of respecting the standard, it goes to hell.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have to do that. And I know it's frustrating. Believe me, especially whenever you're talking about politics, where like there's so many things that affect your judgment and your emotions. But at the end of the day, we have to respect the standards, and we have to be able to sit there and say, look, yeah, you're probably right. However, and it's really hard to do. And maybe I'm being a dick about this, but at some point we're saying, yeah, I get it. I understand what you're saying, but our standards are almost more, I don't want to say are almost more important, but we really need to do a far better job of respecting those standards, mm-hmm. right? Than our personal feelings or our personal understandings, simply because we have to look at the greater good. We can't look at one instance. We have to look at things in a very broad sense. And it's a very, very, very difficult thing to do. And I've been there, like in my level, and I'll be more than honest. Sometimes it's very gut wrenching.
Yeah,
it really is. You really don't want to be in that position, but it's thrust upon you. It's part of your status. It's part of where you are in this whole thing. You have no choice. You have to address this.
And we're at a crossroads in our country with regard to this kind of topic, right? Because there has been an abandonment of the norms. There has been a cheering section about the abandonment of the norms, right? That's what some of the MAGA stuff is about.
Yeah.
Let's get rid of this pretense. Let's get rid of this, bureaucracy. Let's get rid of all these, these norms that we so-called have an autocrat. And when you strip it away, there were all those folks that wanted that autocratic daddy to just do what they wanted them to do.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Lou, is there a doctor in the house?
The doctor in the house.
Do we have a doctor?
Lisa.
We had this. We touched on the Wall Street Journal op-ed, asking an educator of incoming First Lady Jill Biden, who holds 2 master's degrees and a doctorate in education.
And a doctorate.
to stop using the title doctor. Look, there's a lot we can get into this. Here's what I will tell you.
What, that she's not a hooker and a trophy wife?
Right? Because I haven't seen her tits yet, right? Here's what I'll tell you.
We saw the first lady's tits before we saw the president's tax returns.
Isn't that something? Here's what I'll tell you. And I understand it, and for me personally, it's still a very sexist thing to do, right? But I will kill you before you tell me that I can't use the title master, because I will tell you right now, I motherfucking earned that.
Yep.
Okay? I earned it. You want to go through the pain that I went through to get it? God bless you. Then you and I can have a conversation. Until then, shut the fuck up. If you want to go through the amount of well, it's not really pain, because when I say pain, I mean physical, but dedication, history, to look at somebody like her and say, no, you're not going to be a doctor, we should just call you Mrs. Look, I'm going to tell you to shut the fuck up, okay? Because I got a spouse who's doing that right now, and I know for a fact how hard it is. I know how hard it is to go through that. And
that's the conservative brand, though. You know, women. You've said it how many times? That's what the abortion issue's about.
How do you look at some?
They put it off as pro-life bullshit. Maybe they should have told the conservatives the 300,000 dead were post-abortion babies or something.
I looked at and I hate to do it. Who was what was his name? Brzezinski, Mika's father.
Oh, Leonid
Zbigniew.
Right?
Zbigniew, yeah, that's Zbigniew.
He was they referred to him as doctor.
Yeah.
Right? Who was the Secretary of State forever?
Kissinger was a doctor.
Dr. Henry
Kissinger, right? He was a doctor. No one had a problem with that. What's the one difference? And it has nothing to do with politics. What's the one difference?
Well, you know what it is.
Right? All of a sudden we have a female there now, and we can't refer to her as doctor? Really? Dude, it's not easier for you because you're a guy, right? You have a standard. You have to. There's a standardized whatever. You have to go from point A to point B to point C to point D. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter what's between your legs. It doesn't matter. You have to go through the same shit. How the fuck do you look at Kissinger and Brzezinski and all these other guys and call them doctor, but you look at a female and say, yeah, no, kid. Yeah. Or kiddo. That was a kiddo, right?
Kiddo. Yeah. Kiddo.
Look, you really want to call my wife what I call her? I'll fucking punch you in the throat so fucking hard it goes through right through your spine, and it snaps you in half. And what I refer to my wife is lovingly in every way. But I get to tell her that you don't. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we all have that same thing. How the fuck do you look at somebody who was able to accomplish what she did and not recognize the accomplishment? Forget everything. Recognize that accomplishment.
It's actually an embarrassment. It's quite an embarrassment for the individual that wrote it. I keep coming back to this fact that it's the Wall Street Journal that has really, to me, lost credibility. And you know what? It's one of those things that it shouldn't surprise me, but it does, because you've sold out. You've sold out that, to me, and I can only speak for me. When I looked at that Wall Street Journal, the standard that it was, as you said today, both of you guys have said, I might not have agreed with everything they wrote, but I thought of them and said, to me, they had a very objective standard. Whenever I read about something in that news journal, I would say, I believe that they had journalistic integrity to at least, research what they were writing about. They held a valid opinion. To me, that's not there anymore. It really just fell to the wayside with one article.
With one op-ed out of that article, right? And Lou, then they doubled down and tried to bullshit their way through it. How do you do that? I mean, my God. I don't think people, and honest to God, I'll predicate this with saying, and it might sound a bit arrogant on my part, and I apologize, but I don't think people realize how hard it is to get that status, to have that title before their name. I couldn't do it. I'll be flat out honest with you. No,
I don't know if I'd want to go through the time.
there's no way I could. And the people who are willing to put in that kind of dedication and that passion and everything else that it takes to do that. And like I said, I will admit up front that, I have a bias, but God damn, that's hard to do. I don't give a shit who you are. That's hard.
It's incredibly hard to do. It is.
Don't forget the base they're baiting that are mainly high school graduates.
That's
Nothing
it.
against that, but
No,
it's a big factor.
That's it. That's what, they want to discredit education. They do two things at one time. They're discrediting education. They're discrediting women who who have the ambition and the skill and the knowledge to go get that education. So it's 3-in-1 for them, I guess. But I wanted to end, or at least start to wind up with something. Maybe we could do a little exercise in comedy, see how it goes. Since we've talked about a couple of topics that are almost farcical in their in nature, if we got a Bill Barr tell-all, what would the book be titled?
oh my God. How did I fuck you? I don't know. I mean, hey, Lou, help me out here. Well, what would you say if you had to title his book? What would it be? I say you can't count I mean, it's almost the Kama Sutra all over again, right? What would you call it?
Yes, he really was an idiot.
Yeah. You know what? I fucking hate every one of you. How's that?
Billy Barr the door. The libs are at the gate.
Right? I don't know what it is. I truly don't. But I've always said that I've said it especially true after Obama's last term, whenever, obviously he couldn't run again. And I can remember it clearly, looking at my wife and telling her, at this moment, we will find out if our country is more racist or sexist.
It's always been more sexist.
And it's far more sexist. And our racism is abysmal. It's terrible.
That just shows you how bad.
But our sexism is worse.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you just have to look at history. You just have to look at the fact that when did women get their right to vote? How many years after the right to vote?
Yeah.
It was 100 years this year.
Well, here's what I'll tell you. If you have to fight for that, that should tell you enough. Right? That should tell you enough. If you need an amendment to tell you that you're at least in this portion of everything that you're equal to like everybody else around you, that should tell you enough.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I was going through, what the hell was it on last night? And one of these MAGAs had posted, they did the Electoral College if women didn't have the right to vote.
We'd be screwed.
We'd be fine.
And guess what? It would have been about 370
Yeah.
History will tell you.
to Trump.
Right? History will tell you. We're just no good on our own. Right? Every time we've come up with a good decision, it's always been our girlfriend / wives who's been behind it. It always has been. It's just how it is. Right? It just takes age to admit that.
Yeah, you're right.
That's it. Okay, folks, let's get going. Today's Monday. We will be back on Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah.
We will be back on Thursday. Same bad time, same bad channel. For everybody who was on with us, we thank you very much. We will see you everybody again on Thursday. But until then, goodbye, good luck, and God bless. We will see everybody then.